Well, Paige Lindsey, I'm so excited to have you on today. I think this is a great vendor grouping type, right? And I think had we have gone back, I think Dorothy and I would have done this at our wedding. There's not a ton of the, painting during the weddings event sort of thing. I love that. I see people ask all the time about that. We met, I know, at this Nahomish wedding tour a few months ago. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you do?
Awesome. Well, first of all, Reed, thank you so much for letting me be on your podcast. I'm super excited to be here. My name is Paige. My company is Paige Lindsey Design, and I am a painter. I specialize in watercolor and acrylic paintings, and I paint a lot of flowers. And part of my business, I paint custom wedding bouquets. And then most recently, I started painting live at weddings, which has been super fun and really, really cool. I moved to Seattle from Boston about a year ago. And so when I moved here, like in the middle of COVID, like it was so hard to just start meeting new people because I feel like I just started from zero, building up my network. And so what I did was I reached out to so many people via DM, like just cold DMing people on Instagram, being like, hey, I do this type of service for, couples, like preserving their memory through like their painting with the wedding bouquet, just like gaining as much knowledge as I possibly could. And I've been really lucky enough to talk with so many people, wedding planners, event planners, to help me get started in this whole live painting thing, which has been awesome.
Well, and I think I do mean that. I think it's great. And we get asked it a lot. We've done, a couple weddings over the years where we've had them. I know there's some, I think in Central Washington years ago, I did one way out kind of in the middle of nowhere. But nowadays where there's so much, digital stuff and even like the wedding videos and, we're just, it's on our phone. I think having something like that you can, place on your wall, right? Somewhere in prominence in your home, right? And enjoy it. What was, the thought process to add on the live events and obviously not just weddings, but events as well?
Yeah, no, great question. So, when I was thinking about like what my business looked like for myself, I really loved, just like a little backstory. I like to call I'm a COVID bride. So like I got engaged in 2018 and my husband and I had a long engagement. So 2 years. And then, like so many other people, we had to change and alter our wedding plans because, 2020. And I was like really bummed out. And I was like, oh, what can I do that will just make me feel better about this whole situation? So I started just like painting my wedding bouquet that I was going to originally have. And I did this like giveaway on Instagram where I picked like 6 brides and I was like, I want to do this for everyone else that's going through exactly what I'm going through. I know it's like a lot to handle and like just like a really shitty situation, but like, at the end of the day, like you will have that special day. And it kind of like put everything in perspective. It was like, it doesn't really, at the end of the day, it's all about like you and your partner and being with that person, for the rest of your life. So I did this giveaway where I chose like 6 people and I painted their bouquets. And then that was super popular. And then when I moved, I was like, okay, I want to do more of that. But what else can I do in the wedding world that would also align with like me and my vision and what I'm truly passionate about? And so then I was like, looking at, and like I have a podcast called Paiges Pod where I interview a bunch of artists, and one of my art friends, Abby Lynn of Abby Lynn Art, she's a live wedding painter down south. And I was like starting to do more research. And I was like, oh, like this is pretty big down south, like Texas, Alabama, like really huge. And I was like, I haven't really seen that on the East Coast where I was living, and also in Seattle. There was maybe like 1 or 2 other artists that do similar things. And then I was like, oh, that's something that I think I would really be interested in. As an artist, you're by yourself in your studio a lot, and it can be very lonely. And so I think for me, I'm definitely an extrovert and like to be around people. So having that opportunity to do something that I love, like paint in a live environment, like live in an environment where people are interacting and engaging with you and asking questions and being like, oh, like, what is this? Was like, oh, I was super interested in it. And so I guess that's the why behind why I started doing, or at least wanted to be more involved in the whole wedding world and doing live wedding painting. But yeah, and then I realized I was like, okay, well, I feel like a lot of live wedding painters incorporate people. So like when you say like live wedding painter, I think right away people are like, oh, like there's people involved, which is true. Like a lot of wedding painters add the people. But I was like, I don't really paint people. I'm more about the aesthetic of the environment, the landscape, the decor. And so then I was like, why do I have to follow the rules of what everyone else is doing? So my live wedding painting is a little bit different, where I specialize in, like I said, the decor, the floral arrangements, the actual landscape, the venue, and less about the people. So, and I think it's like you said, like we're in a digital world now, and having a memory like of your big day kind of captured through the lens of an artist that you can then put on your wall and cherish forever is like really special, because I know that's what I would have wanted. So.
Well, absolutely. And like we said, you know, I see a lot of posts online, and I see a lot of people ask about that. And it's great to have a variety. It's so hard when there's only, like you said, one or two that do it in the area. Then you really are like pigeonholed into like, well, I want this. I don't know if I like this style or this person or this, but yeah, this is kind of what we want, where it is nice to have at least a couple different options, you know, like videography, you know, where I don't like that way Reed does videos or whatever. Well, that's fine. Yeah. There's a lot of other people. And so I think that that's great. And then obviously with the watercolors and things too, right? It's a different look and feel as well. Do you want to talk about kind of the style of art that you specialize in?
Yeah, totally. So I went to school for painting, and my degree is like, my background's in oil paint. And then when I graduated, I kind of like took a hiatus from painting. I was just exhausted from like, I was like, I can't do this right now. Like I need a break. Cause art school is just, it's a whole other conversation, but I was like, okay, I need a break. And then when I started like getting back into art in my own creative practice, I like was in Boston at the time, like pretty broke, because like right out, like just graduated, and I was like, okay, what's like a cheap way to get back into art, because oils are so expensive, like oil paint, like all of the stuff. So I got into watercolors, which was, I've never really painted before. I wasn't really taught that technique and style in school. I think I took one pigment making class, like a watercolor class, where we made our own pigments. But so I just started dabbling in watercolors, and I fell in love because, you know, the water really controls the paint, and you can travel with it, and you can be in a really small space. Like at the time, I was at this really tiny apartment in Boston, like zero lighting. It was, you know, and so it was great because it was just super small, compact, and I can travel with it. I can go outside, I can move around with it. And so my particular style is, I would say, more loose, fluid, not very realistic. I wouldn't say all the way abstract, but kind of in the middle of like realistic and abstract. So that's like my general style.
Did you go to school out in where'd you go to school? Art school?
Yeah, I went to University of New Hampshire.
And are you from the East Coast?
Yeah, I'm from New Jersey.
What was it like making the transition to Seattle? What brought you out to the West Coast?
Yeah, so it's funny because everyone's like, why did you do that? Which I never thought I'd be the type of person to move across the country ever. I'm very close to my family. I have a lot of like friends that live on the East Coast. So when I moved to Boston in 2013, and my then boyfriend, who then became my fiance, who is now my husband, we were there for almost 8 years. So, and I will say, like, I love Boston. It's clean. It's like very accessible. Like you can travel from one end of the city in the other in such a short amount of time. I think Boston is, for about 4 years, is really great. And then past 4 years, I think you're ready to move on to other things. So I think we extended our stay a little bit too long, you know? And so because we were very like comfortable, and we saw what there is to see in Boston as well as like on the East Coast. And our lease was coming up. We like officially got married, and we're like, well, what's our next move? Do we stay in Boston? And that was like during COVID, like we didn't really want to. So it was either move closer to our families, which honestly, we just weren't ready for that. We're like, we still need to like explore. So we had like a few friends in Seattle, which we both went to go visit. And we're like, oh, my husband's from Vermont. So Seattle, I feel like for him was like, oh, there's mountains. I like love bodies of water. There's a city. There's a lot of other things to do. And just, we've never explored that part of the country before. So we were just like, well, fuck it. Let's just try. And if we hate it, we can always meet back. So that was like, it was kind of crazy because we moved during like COVID, and then I got there and I was like, I think this was a terrible mistake. I don't know anyone. I like his, like the people we knew were his friends. So like, I don't know any, like I don't have any friends of my own. I've definitely left all of my like work connections, and I was just like, what am I doing? But I will say it was one of those things where it completely just like pushed me outside of my comfort zone and like made me network, made me like figure out, okay, like just creative problem solving, which I felt so like kind of in a rut and stuck in Boston just because I was there for so long. And so moving to a completely new place with new people, I just felt so inspired. I was also freaking out at the same time because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here, but I don't know. Right now, being here for an entire year, I've grown so much, I think, as a person, as a business owner, and as an artist. And it's because of this move. So that's why.
Yeah, it's so hard, especially like as a business owner that, you know, or you have all your connections, you have all your networking and everything. And then to move, I couldn't, you know, at this point, it would be terrifying, you know, for me to have to like move, you know, and I see vendor, you know, one of our good photographer friends here, you know, she moved to Florida, and I was like, oh my God, you know, like I just don't even know how just the process of having to set up again and make all those connections, like you said, and reaching out and doing a lot of that work. Was it easier to do with all the digital means we have now with Instagram and stuff, like you said, to send out DMs and stuff? How did you feel that the networking went out here?
Yeah, so I actually, to be completely honest, people are super friendly here, and like we're willing to like have conversations, which I love being from New Jersey. I'm very proud to be from New Jersey, but I think being close to like, you know, the tri-state area, close to New York City, Boston too, it's like people are always like go, 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 like super competitive. And I feel like I was just expecting a lot of people to just ignore me, because like I was just kind of used to that. I was like, oh, like someone will eventually reach out, but it's going to take a while. And I think just networking online here, I found was so much easier because people were just truly just honestly interested. They're like, oh, like this live wedding painting, I've never heard of this before. Let me learn more about it. But also just so willing to share knowledge and like who to connect with and who to reach out to and what events to go to and how to like dip your toes in, you know, the Seattle wedding world, where I just feel like there's no one's really like super competitive. Everyone's just really friendly and like has one another's backs, which I was like, oh, this is awesome.
It is. It's because it's not the biggest market in the world, right? I mean, it's not overwhelming number of vendors. You know, that I know that like we have, I film like the WIPA stuff, and there's an event, like a networking event tomorrow I have to film. And it's, you know, it's generally the same kind of groupings of people every time, but it is nice to kind of know that once you get in there, right, it's really easy to kind of have those connections carry on and feel, and especially where you're, I think like me in video, you know, and you're obviously a little bit more unique, but like there's not a ton of videographers, right? So I get a lot of like, oh, you should go talk to Reed. And I would imagine it's a similar thing where not a lot of people do what you do, and it's like, oh well, here, you should go talk to Paige, because you know, I basically by process of I don't have anybody else, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And I also was using this whole networking thing as a way to like meet people, because I was very determined and adamant to find my own friend group, because I was like, I need other people that I can like, you know, hang out with eventually and like connect with. And so I would use my business and be like, hey, like you seem really cool and interesting. I'd love to talk more and pick your brain. Like, let's grab coffee, or like, let's go on a walk. And to my surprise, people are like, yeah, and now I've met like a bunch of people, and I'm very grateful for it. So even though like social media, it can be a beast, I've, you know, only have had with meeting people and connecting, it's been nothing but positive.
What inspired you to get into painting and artwork?
I think because, well, there's like so many things that inspire me, but for me, painting has always been just an outlet for everything, like for how I'm feeling, or if I'm dealing with something that is really hard, or I just don't know how to process something, I'll take all of that and put it onto a painting, a piece of paper. And like, it just kind of works through a lot of emotional stuff for me. It's like a free form of therapy in my eyes, but Yeah, but I'm very inspired by like flowers have always inspired me because truthfully in like dark times of my just in general, like no matter how shitty my day is, if I buy myself flowers, I instantly feel better. And I think I just portray that feeling of that sense of happiness, mood shift, change through a piece of artwork.
So then what was the decision like to go to art school and try to, really make a go at it? And, cause like, well, I'm not artistic at all, but I mean, there's a lot of people that are artistic that don't decide to pursue that as a career.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because if you go to art school, it's like you won't get a job, right? I've been told that from day one. And I think, I don't know, ever since I was little, I've always loved creating and painting and making stuff with my hands. And I just always was like, oh, I'm going to go to art school. I never really thought about any other degree, which is, I don't know. I just never really, I was always like, I'm going to art school. I'm going to art school. And, my parents were very supportive in my decision to pursue art. They were very like, it's going to be very hard. Like if you want to pursue art full time, it will be challenging. And that always stuck with me because it's so true. And I talk to a lot of younger artists and I'm like, or people who aspire to go to art school or become an artist. And by the way, you don't have to, if you're an art, like you don't have to be an artist and go to art school too. Like being an artist doesn't mean you have to go to art school, but I do find that if people are pursuing art school, like minor in business, like I wish someone was like, hey, minor in business, or like double major business and art, or major in business, minor in art. Because I mean, as an artist, if you want to like, be an artist full time, that's a business. And you need to know the ins and out of what a business even looks like or what to do, which I've been, Googling and just YouTubing along the way and figuring out as I go. And so, I guess like I always wanted to go to art school. I was always just, whenever I told people I was getting my major in painting, they'd be like, oh, well, good luck with that. And I think I always just wanted to prove to all the people that told me that I would never really make it, that I could. And so, I mean, I'm turning 31 this year, so it's taken a lot, a lot of messing up and a lot of like stepping stones to get to where I am. But I mean, it's possible. And I also think a lot of people, at least like the old school way of thinking, is being an artist only means like you make paintings, you have gallery representation, you're in all these publications, and there's just so much more opportunity for artists nowadays. And it's just a different way of thinking as an artist, which they don't teach you in art school.
Well, it's hard because, like you said, that being an artist, and we have a lot of people on the podcast because we talk, running a business, you do all these things, right? Where you're a florist, but you have to be an accounting person and you have to be a social media manager and all these things. And, and that was like me, I had done video and TV and whatever for years. And then I remember the first time that we like got a gig, I was like, we're going to go private. And my buddy Paul and I at the time, and, we got this gig and they're like, okay, well, what, give us a quote, like, what's it going to cost? And we're like, we have no idea, because
like, wait, I don't know.
Cause, and they're like, and we had both, collectively shot video for 20 years. Right. And we're like, we have no idea, like at all. Cause it's different when you're like, okay, now I'm running the business and I have to do these things. Is it extra challenging do you find it more challenging or not as an artist to run the business, or is it the same like as a florist or as a designer or as like a videographer in doing that, or is there an additional layer?
I don't know, because I mean, even as a florist, as a videographer, you are creating something out of nothing. So it's like my friend Ryan Kelly says it best. We're like magicians. We're like creating the product, and then we're going and marketing. We're like pricing. We're doing all of the other things that go into running a business. So I mean, I would say it's comparable. It's the same. I think. I mean, I don't know. It's just, there's different layers than like a florist and a videographer. Like there's like the process, there's the research, and like, okay, where you pull your inspiration. But I think that goes for you guys too, So I think it's the same.
Do you find that you excel at both sides? Because there's some people, right, that like I am much more on like the business side than I am like an artsy person, right? And then there's some people that are more like they don't, can't do their books or whatever, but are like, how do you balance the two out? Because I think there's some split there.
Oh yeah, well, I'm definitely like I'm not the best at managing my time. I would much rather be painting all day and doing fun, creative stuff that has like that doesn't really push my business forward. It does, like the creative process and like the painting aspect. That's like the core of my business. But I mean, I am very, very lucky that my husband is very business finance oriented. So he's taught me a lot of how to like be in control of my finances, be super organized. Like when I get a commission, when I get an event, when I book something, like right away, like just make sure you have everything down, how much you're making, what materials you're using. I say I'm the best at it? No, like I'm getting better, but it's hard to manage the business side versus the creative side because my brain, I always I'm just more gravitated towards the creative, the painting, the fun stuff, which like I need to flip my mindset and always be thinking like this business stuff is the fun stuff too, because that's what's helping me improve my business and just, make it grow and expand.
It is nice nowadays where, like you said, even though, and I didn't either major or anything in business or finance or anything, but where we have the resources to learn a little bit more on the go, right? And I see a lot of the Facebook groups that I'm in for business, like wedding stuff. There is a lot of these questions about things and, hey, what should I do in this situation? So it is nice to feel like, even if you don't do that, which obviously I would tell anybody that too, like please learn accounting or please learn finance, but that you can. I just think it's nice nowadays that it's not this like nebulous, I don't know what to do. Like you can find resources to help figure out your business stuff as you go, but it is very hard to grow a business and also learn at the same time.
Oh yeah, it's really hard because you just want to be like, oh, I wish I knew this already. Like I wish I was knowledgeable in this because it just makes my life easier. But that's never the case. I mean, I'm constantly learning and growing every day as far as like the business side of it. And yeah, when I chat with younger artists, I'm just like, do this now. Like help yourself, do it now. So, but yeah, I had another thought, but it'll come back to me.
That's okay. I wanted to talk to you, and we brought up this before, and then we were talking before we started recording. You just did Claire and Mike's wedding. Claire's friend of the podcast, Claire Fernandez, has been on multiple times, both on this one and on Best Made Weddings. And, it is where you're an artist in the studio painting, right? At home or at your studio all day, and then doing these live weddings, right? Where people are around, people are wanting to come up and interact and talk to you. I mean, it was a learning process for me going into weddings too, and oh, hey, what's going on? What are you doing? I mean, how do you, obviously the energy and everything is good. How do you vibe off that and everybody because it has to be different than being at home and doing that.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Like you said, we were talking about this before we were recording, but being an artist, for me, I like paint out of the corner of my living room. That's my studio. So like I'm there all the time, like working by myself and in my own thoughts in my own head, and it's very lonely. And so for me, I'm an extrovert and I love being around other people. So having the opportunity to do something that I love and show people something that I love to do and have them interact and engage in that process is so freaking awesome. Like people coming up to me, I will say, like, I have to sometimes cut the conversation short because I'm like, okay, I'm only here for a certain amount of time, like hours. Like I have to make sure I complete the painting. But being around people who come up to you, like at the beginning of my painting, who come up to me in the beginning of my painting process and then come up to me in the middle. And then when it's done, like seeing those reactions and having those conversations and just enlightening people of what I'm doing. Because so many people are like, what is this? Like, what is this that you're doing? Like, I had no idea this was even an option. And it's also a way to like market myself too and tell them about all the other things that I have going on, which is, part of the business. And I love it. Sure. Is it stressful? Yes. I honestly think the most stressful part is like the end. And like, I really hope the couple likes what I created, because if not, then I have to figure it out, So I think talking to people like throughout that process doesn't really make me nervous or makes me anxious. But I think that ends, like seeing the couple, I'm just like, I really hope they love what I've created. But yeah, I've never had an issue with them not liking it. But the people coming up to me and talking to me is great. I love it. And sometimes, you have those random guests that are like maybe a little too drunk or a little inappropriate, but you learn to like work around it and do the best you can.
Well, I have to think from a marketing side, it is for you being there, doing the thing while the thing is going on. People can see the painting. We run around, the couple gets the video weeks, months down the road. We're not there, right? The baker or someone that drops off the cake or the flowers, right? They're not there, right? When everyone's eating the cake. It is a unique situation where you're there painting and the people can see the painting. And then they go, well, even if I don't have a wedding or something, I have this other thing coming up, or I would like this done, or I would just have to think that that is a good way to really network once you're at the events, like the wedding shows, like the wedding tours and things like that as well, that like it's going on while you're there, right? Where even, we always joke with video, like we'll be packing up and someone will go, oh, you guys did a great job today. And you're like, we don't know that yet. You haven't seen any of this stuff. We could go home and it could all be garbage. So it is different where I have to think that has to be a unique opportunity for you to help grow that more.
Totally. And I think, people like my supporters and my clients and my art collectors, they invest, not only do they invest in my creations and my paintings, but like I am my business, and for them to get a little snippet of my personality and who I am, I think goes a long way, because I think who I am just, I am my business. And when people can see that like face to face and get to know me a little bit more, I personally think it kind of is, it grabs people into my artwork because they then know who I am, like the face behind the work.
Is it easier nowadays to be, an artist with all the digital media stuff, with all, or social media and digital and everything, and being able to kind of leverage Instagram and things? What is it like being an artist in, 2021?
Yeah. Oh, I love that question. So I think it's very networking with artists has never been easier. Networking and like reaching out. If you have someone you want to work with, like you can just go and direct message them or email them, or like be connected to someone by another artist, or whatever, or just gain information based off of having a conversation with someone online. I will say also being an artist online in 2021, there's a lot of us. There's a lot of us doing the same thing. So you can kind of get stuck in this compare and contrast game where it's like, oh, this person is doing this, like I'm not doing that, which can be very toxic, I find. And so sometimes I have to like mute people or just take a social media break, which I find that we all need to do every once in a while. But I mean, there's pros and cons, but I use social media as a tool like to connect and to have conversations. And I really try my best to not use it as a way to put myself down because someone else is doing something that I'm not doing. And just trying to really stay true to who I am and what I'm doing and what I'm creating, and just kind of, pressing pause on everyone else. Because if I find myself compare and contrast, it's never good. So it's good and bad. I would say for me, mostly good.
Like you said, being able to reach out, right, and network that way where, obviously you do the live events and things, but otherwise, someone could find you anywhere and say, hey, we'd like to do this or whatever. What's the balance between the weddings and other stuff that you do, and then obviously the other commissions and things? I don't even know how that, because my life is all in weddings, but I don't know, how does that work otherwise? Yeah.
So, in addition to, I will say, like, I'm pretty new at the live wedding painting. Like just this year, I really started doing that. And so I will have 4 live painting events like in 2021, which I think was really cool for my first time doing it. So commissions is a huge part of my business. I would say it's a really big chunk of it. From the commissions leads to conversations about live event painting or live wedding painting. Another part of my business, I teach watercolor workshops. So I teach people how to paint with watercolors, whether it's like small groups, private lessons, corporate collaborations where, corporations want employees to do something fun together. And so I do, and I have like my own podcast. So I find like I do a lot of different things, which I'm so passionate about, all different aspects of my business. The live wedding portion, I would say, is not as big of a chunk as, say, commissions or my workshops. But I do want the live wedding painting and live event painting in general to eventually be the bulk of my business. So just for future stuff for Paige Lindsey Design.
Well, and yeah, I mean, I think that it's one of those things where, like, we do all sorts of video, right? In corporate, whatever, but just like, it's easy to say like wedding videography, like that's a thing I can market, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can Google SEO that. And then like you get the other stuff, but it was like when I was in broadcast and I could like tell my mom, like, this is what we do. Right. And then you can still, do all the other things and workshops and podcasts. And that's, it just speaks to, it is like how many things we have to do to like keep what we want to do, work the 80 hours a week to not work 40 hours for someone else. But, I think that like I get it, where you have to find something, and really drive with that, and then let everything else kind of come alongside that as well. So
yeah, so I think I've established I have my buckets of my business. It's workshops, commissions, specifically wedding bouquet commissions. Like that's really all that I do, and then live painting. So those are my 3 buckets of my business that I really kind of focus on. And then I would say some buckets I focus more energy on than others, but those are the 3.
How do the bouquet paintings work?
So how they work is someone, usually either it's whoever's sending me the bouquet, they're sending me an image and I just paint their bouquet. That's really how it's easy as that. So like with Claire, she wanted me to paint her bouquet, but she just wanted me to do it live at the wedding, which I thought was a super cool way to do that, but in a live event space. So yeah, people will reach out to me. I like put them on my calendar for my commissions calendar, and then they send me a bunch of pictures. And then because what I usually tend to do is I pull from different photos, because like a bouquet, there's so many cool different, ways to look at it, and how it looks differently from this angle and that angle. So I kind of pull my favorite shots and angles and place it all on a painting. That's how I do it.
Well, no, and that was kind of going to be my follow-up question was, because we'll obviously get detailed shots of the bouquets and stuff at the weddings. And yeah, it is very, it lives and breathes, right, in the way that if you lay it or if it's standing or leaning. I mean, I would just have to imagine that would be difficult to find the best way to capture that.
Totally. And like I do a lot of sketching beforehand, and I kind of do there's a lot of conversation between, my clients, just like kind of seeing their vision and what they really want in their painting. And it's really awesome because so many of my clients who I've done wedding bouquets for, they just let me do my thing and let me run with it. But I always ask, I'm like, okay, well, background color, like what, like your home aesthetic, like let me know the colors or your wedding colors, like colors you don't want in your painting. Like we have a really honest conversation about that. And then from there, I'll do a few sketches and then start creating the masterpiece. And it's fun because some people will want to incorporate table settings in the bouquet. So maybe not necessarily flowers that were in their bouquet, but maybe they pull from other decor that they used in the wedding, which is really fun and different too.
Do you get, do they ever send you the photos once they're like in their home or once things are placed or whatever? What is that like?
Oh, it's the best because I'll get messages being like, Paige, thank you. So like just the kindest messages about how much they love the painting, which that feeling never gets old. That feeling of someone sending me an email, a text, a DM, whatever, I'd be like, look at the painting you made. It's hung up here. Like, look how beautiful it is. Thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for preserving that memory in a way that's just so unique and different and special and something that I'll have for the rest of my life and that hopefully will be passed down to like future generations. So I think that is the best part, I think, is getting those messages because I don't know, it's just the fact that I can make something that creates this feeling for other people is truly magical. I love it.
Well, and I said, maybe it's just getting older or whatever, but the limited number of the art that we have, we've had forever, right? I studied abroad, and the guy that was with us was a priest, and he painted, and I have like a canvas, or I don't even know, whatever from that that I've had for 15 years, right? And it's something, right, that you cherish, and it's the same with these the weddings and the bouquets and all these things where it's made for you and it's about you or something that you experience. I have to think that the longevity of having something like that is tremendous. Has to far exceed, just having, a photo or whatever hanging on the wall, or, something like a printout. So,
yeah, I love supporting other artists. I have a collection of work from so many of my art friends, and, you invest in artwork and then it just has such a great meaning, because for me, it's like, I know these people and I know they put their heart and soul into what they made. And I bought a piece of their heart and soul that is now hanging up in my home. And that, I don't know, it's just, I think a lot of people need to know how special it is when you buy from an artist or someone that is making something with their hands, and it creates this like magical energy and just like these feelings, like that's what you take home with you. And I think, yeah, it's great. I love it.
Before we let you go, I did want to hear a little more about the planning the wedding over the last 2 years, and what and I know that Claire, I'm sure, can speak from experience too about as someone in the wedding community where working through all these things. But what has it been like? Because obviously you can. What's the right word? Sympathize, whatever, commiserate with a lot of other people going through stuff. What was the process like for you?
Yeah. Oh, I love this question because, and I'll give you the whole story. So I I got engaged in 2018, and my husband and I decided to do a 2-year engagement because 2019 we had a bajillion weddings that we were both in, and we're like, there's no way we're planning our wedding in 2019. It's too much. We'll just like take our time, enjoy it. Long year engagement, whatever. So our original venue was in Vermont, which is where my husband's from. And, 2020 came around and they're like, so this thing's happening, not quite sure what's happening. Okay. So then we realized that our original wedding date was just no longer a thing. Meanwhile, I'm like, Sam, who's my husband, we've been engaged for 2 years. I'm like, let's just get married. Like, I don't want to wait. Like, who knows how long we have to wait to get married? Like, let's just get married. So we officially got married in my parents' backyard in New Jersey on August 1st in 2020. Just our immediate family, super small backyard, like very, very DIY. It was not what I envisioned for, like, I like to call it wedding part 1 and wedding part 2. Like, it was so hot, but it was also very, very magical because it was so intimate and just Sam and I in our immediate family. Like, we wrote vows and then we just had a nice, like, quiet, intimate dinner. And then we were officially married, and we still just had no idea about our original venue. And so we're like, oh, let's just plan on having wedding part 2. We still had no idea what was happening, blah, blah, blah. And so we actually were able to have our wedding part 2 where I wore my dress. We had our bridesmaids, groomsmen, like everyone can come party with us on June 17th. So this past June is when we had our wedding part 2. So I will say this whole 3 years, so from start to finish was 3 years, it completely consumed me. I was crying all the time. I was like overwhelmed. I didn't know what to do, or like, because you just don't know, right? And so you have all these plans to do stuff and you can't do any of it. So then when we got the okay that we were going to have a wedding part 2 in Vermont, like everything's a go, it was craziness because everything was just so last minute. Like, yeah. I thought my head was going to explode, but we did it. And we did it being in Seattle, and like the wedding was in Vermont, which was also an added layer. And yeah, so I can sympathize because I just know the amount of stress and emotion that goes into planning a wedding, just a normal wedding. But then on top of that, a COVID wedding where it's like you plans stop, you rearrange, you pivot, you come up with scenarios. Like, we were coming up with guest list scenarios. Okay, like 50 people, 75, like 150, 2. Like, it was insane. And I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And so when that day actually happened of like wedding part 2, it was just like a relief. But I'm also like, it was the best day of my life. Like, it was the wedding we planned and envisioned originally, and that was able to happen. And yeah, it was a lot, but it was the first wedding that people went to in the past, like, for 2 years, like not doing anything. And our event was like the first event for a lot of people. So it was a lot of emotions, a lot of energy. And I'm still kind of in awe that it all came together, you know?
Well, well, congratulations. Yeah, I'm glad that all, it's been a trying time. So.
Oh yeah, it was insane, but I think I mentioned this to you before, but at the end of the day, all of the stuff originally that I was worrying about, it just didn't matter. None of it mattered, you know? And I think I learned a lot. I was like, I just learned to let a lot of stuff go. Because it doesn't matter at the end. It just doesn't matter.
It's funny. We got our wedding on Saturday. We got brought in later into the conversation, but I was talking with the mom beforehand, and she goes, "Yeah, there was two daughters, and the one they had been engaged. So this would have been back in 2019." And they were going to have a family dinner, and they said, "Oh, hey, we're getting married. We're going to get married October 15th. Like, we picked our date." And the other sister goes, "Oh my God, like, we were just going to tell everybody, like, we're pregnant. That's our baby's due date." Right. So the other sister goes, "Oh, well, no worries. Like, we'll push it. We'll do it in March. We'll do a spring wedding." And then like everything has happened. So now, 2 years later, whatever, it's now, it was August 14th and they finally got it. But yeah, it's like, who would have thought planning all these things and like you said, doing a, wonderful Vermont wedding. And then, next thing you know, it's June and it's 2 years later. So,
yeah. And I also just laugh at some of the friends that also just been through the same thing that Sam and I have been through. It's like, there are no rules. Like, I feel like with COVID, like there are no rules anymore. And so it's just anything goes. Like, I have friends who officially got married and like their wedding part two, like now they have a kid, and like, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. There are no like right or wrong ways to go about like getting married or whatever. It's just, as long as you want to be that person and love that person, you're together and align with the same things, like the whole wedding thing. It just, because it can get out of hand. It can get so crazy. And it really just kind of sheds those layers of what really matters.
Yeah. Well, Paige, thank you so much for hopping on today. This was good. I'm glad we could get a new, fresh voice on the Get to Know Your Wedding Pro podcast. If you're like Paige and you're interested in coming on in the future, bestmadevideos.com/podcast guest. That's the place to go to fill out the form. Paige, anything else from you before we let you go?
No, I just want to say thank you so much for having me. You can find me, those of you who are listening, PaigeLindseyDesign.com is my website. And you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Paige Lindsey Design. And my podcast where I interview a bunch of artists, Paiges Pod, wherever you listen to your podcast. But Reed, thank you so much. This was so fun and so awesome. And yeah, I love your podcast. It's great.
I'm going to look up Paiges Pod, and then how is the TikTok going for you? Because that is the one that is the one that Best Made Videos has yet to. I think I have the URL. I have it reserved somewhere. But how is that going for you?
Well, it's, I'm a millennial on TikTok, so I'm not great. I'm trying, but you know what I've learned? It's just like anything new. You just have to start somewhere, and yeah, it's not going to be the best. I'm definitely like, it's just funny to me. I'm just like, oh, it's something new. Like, I know it's just another free way to advertise what I do. But I will say with my podcast, I interview a lot of younger artists who are just like blowing up on TikTok. And I've learned so much from them. And it's just, you just got to try. Who cares if you're failing miserably? It doesn't matter. Just try.
Perfect. Well, maybe we'll do a Best Made Weddings roundtable about best TikTok practices here coming up.
Let's do it. I love that idea.
Well, Paige, thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.